Welcome to this episode of The Compliance Guy. As always, I want to begin by saying thank you all so much for tuning in, logging on, and just hanging out with me for a little while as I get to hang out with one of my favorite people, Emmy Award winner, undercover millennial, entrepreneur extraordinaire, honorary astronaut, Mr. Mr.
Uh,
Clint Pulver.
What's up, Sean? So good to hang out with a good friend. This is awesome. Honored to be here.
It is. And I love that I have somebody that says my friend. I don't have a lot of people call me their friend these days, but that's all right, you know? It's all good. Um, but I'm so excited to welcome you back to the program. We were chatting for just a few minutes before we went live, and um, I was sharing with you that it's almost a year ago that you were on the podcast, and we talked about your book. I love it here, and the undercover millennial, and um, how much I enjoyed that book, and I told you I wanted to have you back on, when you wrote your next book, but you did something even bigger. You went way beyond writing a book, and you developed a program, and I'm so intrigued by it because I think so much of what's missing today in business, irrespective of what your industry is leadership. I think there's a lack of competency. And we'll talk about the reason why in healthcare for in just a few minutes. But I think there's a lack of understanding, a lack of capability or competency. And I think that lack of competency comes from a lack of training and education on how to get the best out of your people, how to get people to believe that they can accomplish even more than what they think they can, right? People talk about words all the time like synergy. And, they say, God, it's such a hokey word, but it's really not. But I want to talk about what you developed, and that's your management masterclass, and, really kind of dive into, the crux of what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah. So I mean, for 6 years now, I've been conducting the undercover millennial research. So I've been a researcher. We wrote the book. I love it here. And then I travel as a professional keynote speaker, sharing that research. How do we help organizations create a place that people never want to leave? How do we help those leaders to create a place where people don't just survive at work, but they actually thrive? And my biggest pet peeve as a professional speaker, as I would come in, do these large conferences, these big events, great organizations, wonderful people, and they're on cloud nine. They love the message, they love the research, the excitement of that. Then they leave the conference, they go home. A week sets in, 2 weeks sets in, the routine, something stressful happens, work gets busy again, and then we forget, we just forget. Like it becomes, there might be some moments and things that we carry with us that we've heard from certain people, whether it's a grandparent or a speaker or a teacher, but overall it's hard to like keep the momentum moving forward, to keep the message alive. And as a speaker, I'd get off stage and I'd have, the CEOs, I'd have the event planners, the HR director, they'd come up and they'd say, how do we keep this alive? How do we keep this moving forward? And this was the reason why we created the masterclass series. We basically took the book, I Love It Here, and we broke it into 52 micro learning videos. And the reason for 52 is because obviously there's 52 weeks in a year. So the thought is, okay, for a year after the keynote, your people are going to get one video a week from me, someone they're already connected to, somebody they've already heard speak, and it is shot in the highest quality production that you can create. 4K video, beautiful studio, actors, directors, the casting, the writing of the whole production. It took me 2 years to film and to write and produce this. Um, I am so proud of it. It is unlike any other LMS system or any other leadership development system in the world. We also created, it's basically curriculum. It's curriculum for you as a leader or a CEO to say, hey, we got to increase retention. I got it. I've got to train my leaders on how to create connection, because long gone are the days where, e- employees just be glad you have a job. Like, employees have options now. You could throw a stone and you could hit an organization that is dying for good talent. And organizations are learning that we've got to keep people. We've got to keep the good ones. How do we keep them engaged? It's killing us on the revolving door of turnover every time somebody leaves our organization, or every time they mentally check out and stay. And the coolest part, Sean, you know this, the coolest part about leadership is that it matters. The hardest part about leadership is that it matters every day. How do you not just create, like you mentioned, competency, but consistency in your leadership? Where we're actively having conversations about it. We're actively looking at what's working and what's not. We're talking about how can we be better. We're influencing others in a way that's modeled off of research-based content, other people in our lives that, again, help us to get better. And that's what this masterclass series does. And I'm just so proud of it, and it's moving the needle for so many organizations. We beta tested it with organizations before we launched it, and how it is just moving the needle forward. It's creating the conversation, and it's done in a beautiful way where people will actually watch it. They'll actually watch it. And then we've created the workbook that creates the discussion around it to, again, increase the conversation. We just need conversation about it, and then from that conversation to create a plan that's implemented and moves the needle forward.
You know, you're using an incredibly important word, which is conversation. And my wife sent me a link yesterday um, about how cell phones, and I think I can tie this back into sort of where you're going with conversations, right? So we are more connected to our cell phones than we are connected to each other.
Yeah,
We touch our cell phones more than we touch each other. We engage with our cell phones more than we engage with each other. And, one of my favorite quotes is that things are managed, people are led, right? And what what I believe is going on right now, and where I think you're filling a significant void. And I can say this because I've actually sat through one of Clint's keynotes, and I was exhausted at the end of it. For I was exhausted for Clint. I was like, "No, no, no, keep going, man. Go for another hour." But I mean, like, I could like, this guy, I'm serious. If you have never seen Clint deliver a keynote, it's exhausting. The effort, the energy, what he puts into it, the sincere message, and I think a lot of that also probably comes from your strong faith and your devotion to family, and speaking from the heart as opposed to speaking from the cuff, or speaking with what's best for your wallet in mind.
yeah,
And I can say that because you you are, for somebody, and I mean this sincerely, for somebody with your background, for somebody with your stature and the things that you continue to accomplish as you become, globally recognized at a higher scale than what you already are. You haven't changed one bit from the person that I got to know a year ago. You're actively responding to your fan base. You're engaged in conversations online. You share, so much of yourself. And I think sometimes people take that for granted, right?
yeah,
And what's missing, and to tie it all together, I agree with you. We're missing conversations. We're missing civility. And it's not just in the business world, it's in everyday life. Every day you hear more and more anger coming out of people. You hear more and more about how divisive things are. And it trickles not only into your personal life, but people are bringing their personal life into the business. And I think that's where strong leadership has to come into play. Are there is there one specific element in this management masterclass that really sticks out to you? You know, I know all 52 weeks are probably phenomenal, but is there one particular week or one particular message that you drive multiple times that really, was the precipice behind everything that you've done?
Yeah, I think the goal is that because of this master class, a leader's going to have some light bulb moments where they go, you know what, I realize I'm not just a manager, but I'm an advocator. Like I have the opportunity to be a beautiful storyteller, not in the stories that I tell, but in the stories that I help other people write. And I think when we elevate the purpose of leadership, that it's not just someone who manages or gets things done or writes the mission statement or tries to be the inspiring hero, but you become the mentor, you become the person that people actively choose, but that because of you, they get to live better. They like themselves best because they're with you. And I think that light bulb moment of helping a manager to realize, my goodness, it's so much bigger than just crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and that I truly can be somebody that I don't know, just creates that life of significance for others, not just a life of success, that you truly have the opportunity to be the best for the world. And I think we need that in leadership because leadership can be so hard. It can be lonely, it can be dark, it can be just it can beat you up. But when you change that perspective, right? I talk about this a lot that your perspective determines your reality, and whatever's real to you is influencing your behavior. And so, if we can change the perception of leaders and realize that, okay, you're not just the manager, but you're the mentor in the story. That changes things. You live differently. You lead differently, not just in at work, but in your home, in your relationships with your family, in your relationship to your faith. I just it's a beautiful way to live, and if we can do that and we can create that, man, mission accomplished. And I love inspiration, like, I'm an inspirational speaker for crying out loud, like, I love that, and I wish for me, back in my corporate days as a leader, I wish every week I would have had something. I had to go hunt for it, I had to go find something. There just really wasn't anything
Right.
out there that was like leadership development, something that every week I could learn from, I could implement, I could think about, and it was done in an inspiring way that just I saw myself there and I said, "Man, I can do that." Or even something that was affirming to saying like, "You're doing that. You keep it up." Like I just didn't have that. And so for me, the thought of creating something like that for these organizations to use, that it could be that kind of an opportunity for people is worth every bit every bit.
Yeah, I think a lot about, growing up. So in business, right? And it shocks me when I think that this year is gonna be 30 years I've been in healthcare. And then I look in the mirror and I realize that, "Oh, yeah, you look like you've been doing this for 30 years." Um, but I think back to when I first started, right? And, my first opportunity to lead a team was when I became a hospital administrator. And it was just by default. There was just nobody else who was willing to do it. And I was in a great position, and they came to me and they said, "Listen, you know, um, we need somebody to step into this role as the administrator for this hospital. And you've done a great job of, keeping a balanced budget in your department, being effective,
Mhm.
so on and so forth, that, we think you're the logical choice for this position." And I wish I would've known then what I know now, and not to make decisions based on ego or other things, but to make educated decisions, right? And I started picking up books by, like, Stephen Covey, right?
Mhm.
The 7 Habits of Effective Leaders, and, then somewhere along the lines, this dynamic figure popped up out of nowhere by the name of Tony Robbins, and I started trying to emulate some of those things, but, what's missing is an ability for and especially in healthcare, because people get hoisted into or thrust into positions of leadership
Yeah.
because they were successful at another job.
Yep.
They may never have they may never have, you know, uh, um, created a culture of, you know, significance for people to thrive. They may have managed process, but,
Mhm.
you know, people get thrusted into these positions, and there's nothing that helps to guide them along the way, right? I
Right.
mean, sure, you can look at business and SWOT analyses and things like that, but, you know, that's what's missing, and, I understand everything that you're saying and where you're coming from and why your course is so important and the lessons that you're teaching are so important, but, you know, can you understand healthcare,
Mhm.
you know? What is it that would drive an organization from an operational standpoint, to employ the lessons that you're able to bring to them to help them achieve compliance in their organization?
Well, it's always you bring up a great point, Sean, because I think the wild thing to me is has always been because we know this, the research shows us the number one reason why people leave their job is because of the leader, like leadership, right? They don't quit companies, they quit bosses. Leadership, though, is also the number one reason why people stay. Like, how interesting is that? And yet we don't put so it's wild to me how many organizations don't put the emphasis on training and developing leaders and continually helping to support them because the cost of turnover is crazy to an organization. Again, if they leave or mentally if they check out and stay, that's costing you thousands. And so how do we implement that more? Most organizations, what they're doing, Sean, is they're getting this course, and then what they're doing is they've got a regional manager, a district manager, someone who's over a team, and individually they're sitting down once a week with their team and they're saying, "Hey, let's watch this 6-minute video. We've all got the workbook and we're going to watch the video and then we're going to go through the workbook is very simple. We patterned it. I called the workbook. It's called the I Love It Here workbook, but it's based off of a one-to-one theme. One to one. One to one. Because connection is always made that's how you make connection, one to one. The best connections are made one to one. And so in the workbook, it talks about there's one big idea from my research, two two big interesting like points of that research, and then one moment to master. So one big idea, 2 points of research, and 1 moment to master. And that's how they're utilizing it. They're sitting down, they're taking 45 minutes, 30 minutes watching a 6-minute video, reading through that content, and they're saying, "Okay, let's talk. What can we do? Master. How do we create moments for our people?" Because that's what people talk about. In all of my research, they didn't talk about they just they don't the day of the job. They don't talk about the meetings. They don't talk about how good the manager is at time management. Like that's not what they talk about. They talk about the moments. And so how do we create those moments? We don't remember days at work. We remember the moments. Moments of connection, moments of advocacy, moments of support, moments of influence, moments of recognition. And so how can we as a team, as leaders in this or people leaders, what can we do this week to do that? Or what are we already doing? Again, let's have a conversation about it. That's the hope. That's how this is being utilized. And then the following week, let's review. What did we do last week? Last week, we talked about this. Any miracles? Anything cool happen? How did we move the needle forward? What's working? What's not? Like just that simple process, like 90% of organizations just don't do it. They don't do it. And then they wonder why people leave. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
I think people need to recognize that in modern business, with an emphasis on metrics, right? Everybody's into metrics, but,
yeah,
return on investment is another term that everybody
yeah, the
loves to
ROI.
use. Yeah, ROI. You know, what happens then is, the concept of good leadership becomes something of a paradox, right? You know, because at the end of the day, from a business perspective, there is no line item on a profit and loss statement labeled net leadership, right?
Yeah.
So it comes down to recognizing that, to your point, right? Strong leadership is not only one of the best recipes for survival and success in the business world, it's a key part of effectively navigating the world of business. I mean, is that a fair way to put that?
Yeah, and so much of leadership is on the intangible side of things. Like, I know we want the metrics, we want the things that we can trace, and we can look at the P&L statement and go, "Okay, this is moving the needle forward." But you have to realize when you're working with people, if you are a people leader, there is an intangible side of this. That, like, helping people to feel seen, heard, understood. You can't trace that. You can't track that. Yes, you can throw out the employee survey at the end of the year and see how you're doing. But ultimately, like we still need to focus on those intangibles because that's what people talk about. That's what matters to people. It's the survival side of, okay, can I survive? Am I getting a paycheck? Am I able to meet the demands of paying the bills and putting some money into savings and taking the kids to Disneyland? Like, is that a part of it? But then the second part is the ability to thrive, like to thrive, to have significance in your job, purpose and passion, and that's an intangible thing, and it's a part of the equation, because I don't care if you can provide. I call it the 3 Ps: passion, purpose, and the ability to provide. You might have all the passion in the world, but if you can't provide, then there's a problem, right? It might be full of purpose, but again, if there's no passion behind it, your heart's not in it, then we have a problem. Those 3 Ps need to be met: purpose, passion, and the ability to provide. And we have to focus on that as leaders. We have to.
So I know it's so well said. So I know you're a big researcher, right? So I want to get your take on this because researchers at leading institutions have indicated that 30 to 35% of leadership is genetic, right? They indicate that much more leadership ability is clearly attributed to things like education, life events, and trigger moments. What do you think about this statement? If you're not born to lead, you can never learn to lead. What do you think about that? Would you agree or disagree with that?
I would disagree with that. I would disagree. Yeah, I think that is a falsity. I think, man, to again, I'm a big advocate of do not label people. Like,
Yeah.
you know this. You read my book. Like, I'm kind of like not a big proponent of like personality tests, and the enneagrams and the color code, and I don't like that. I think it pigeonholes people. I think you take this test, it kicks out a result, and then it's like, oh, you're a red. You're a ENGFWYZ, and it, like,
Right.
that's who you are. And then all of a sudden, people start viewing you through that lens instead of looking at you as a person with potential, possibilities, specific traits, yes, but traits that can develop and change. You're an ever growing individual. That's why I hate when people are like, they read the current Forbes article. It's like, okay, if you've got Gen Z employees, you got to do these 5 things, do these 5 things, and you'll
Right.
retain your, like, it's a fallacy. It's a marketing hack. It's clickbait. It is this ideology of, like, there's one quick fix. There's a one size fits all approach to a generation or to a person. And it's not the case. We're living, breathing individuals that all have unique backgrounds, distinct differences, personalities, desires, joys, fears, a makeup that, again, makes it difficult at times to lead those individuals. But that also opens up the brilliance and the beauty of what I've seen in my research, is that your job as the leader is to get to the part about that person, that there is no one size fits all approach. And when you become the mentor in that story, the light bulb turns on and you're able to transform people in ways that they never thought were possible, that even at times you maybe never thought was possible. Whether that's being a good leader, developing into a leader, increasing in sales, your communication, your education. I mean, so much of the time, Sean, we just need somebody to believe in us. And I think a stat like that saying that you're either born to lead or you're not is a crippling and unfortunately, I believe a misdiagnosis on the potential of a human being.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And I'm glad. I mean, 30 to 35% is still significant, but I mean, it still leaves the door open that 65 to 70% of it is, you know, is an individual's ability to learn, to adapt, to adjust. As I was listening to you, as you were talking, it made me think about one of my, and you'll see what kind of a nerd I am. It made me think of one of my favorite leadership quotes, right? And it's from a guy by the name of Stanley C. Allen. And let's see if I can get this right without messing it up. Leadership involves remembering past mistakes, an analysis of today's achievements, and a well-grounded imagination in visualizing the problem of the future. I think I got that right. And I've in my life, right? Forget about my business life, right? That I'm very blessed that I have outstanding partners who are willing to shoulder the burden of day-to-day operations and help in those areas. I get an opportunity to mentor, some of the younger generation folks who are interested in getting into the strategic litigation services that I provide and regulatory compliance stuff. But I think about leadership in my personal life, right? And, being a husband, being a father, being a grandfather. And that's where I start to look at the techniques and the things that you're talking about, right? Because you're right, getting an opportunity to be a leader, it's a beautiful thing, right? As long as you have a definitive message to be able to deliver to those who are looking at you and who are depending on you to bring them to that next level, right?
And I would add just and a desire, a desire. Many people are put into positions of leadership. They don't desire to connect with people. They're just looking for the increase in the paycheck, right? Now that you've got a management or you're a title next to your name, you get more money. And that unfortunately is that just never makes for a good leader. That makes for a good boss, maybe a good manager at times. But the desire to really connect with people and to love people and to be a mentor for others, to help others people succeed. And you might have all the leadership characteristics on paper, the education, the ability to communicate, the message, the the thought, the background, the history, the degree, whatever. But man, if you don't have a desire to love and care for people and become an advocate, yeah, that's gonna be that's gonna be tough and full of some
Yeah.
unfortunate circumstances.
Let me ask you one more thing. Would you agree that part of being an effective leader and having the ability to get things done, if you're a leader, you have to be a teacher, right? You have to be a coach. You have to be able to consult people. You have to be able to instill a sense of purpose and
Mhm.
belonging, right? In order to be an effective leader. It's not just, what color sprinkles are we going to put on to Sean's birthday cupcake today, right? But
Yeah,
it goes far beyond that, right? Because leadership's an observable, learnable set of practices. I think we agree on that, right? It's not just something that has to be innate. It goes far beyond that, right? So leadership is observable, it's learnable. Um, we have to learn to lead ourselves so that we can be seen as leaders by others. At least that's my take on it.
yeah, yeah. You bring up some really good insights. I so this is how I categorize it. And again, in my research as the undercover millennial, this is the thing that really worked. The goal is to get people that you lead to choose you, not be forced to, not they're listening to you because they're going to get fired if they don't, not because they're sucking up to you because they're trying to get a raise. No, like they voluntarily choose you. And so that's why there's three categories to this. There's leadership, there's a leader. Okay. Now, the traditional view of leadership is you stand at the helm of the ship and you lead. You're the visionary. Like, think of a CEO. Think of, even a manager. This is the direction. This is what we're doing. This is what we're trying to accomplish. We got to get from point A to point B to point C. That would be the traditional leader. A manager is about making sure that there's no holes in the ship. How do we get there faster, more efficiently, quicker, effectiveness? Let's manage the process. And this is why I talk so much about mentorship, because mentorship is not leadership. Mentorship is not management. Mentorship is about taking care of the people on the ship. It's where you become an advocate in somebody's life that because of you, they get to live better. Not just the company, right? Leadership is focused on the company. You're leading the company. You're leading the organization. You're leading the family, right? But mentorship is about taking care of the people on the ship. We talk about developing and advocating. Most of the time when we talk about leadership, it's about development. Let's develop people. Let's lead people to progress to a certain level. Where advocacy and mentorship is about, no, how do I get to the part about you? What matters to you? And how do I help that become possible? That's what people talked about. That's what people chose. So I've always looked at it as mentorship is the most powerful form of influence, because you can't become a mentor until the mentee invites you into their heart. And that's how better leadership becomes effective. That's how better management becomes effective. All things are important. All three of those are important. Leadership is important. Management is important. But all of it is void. All of it is short lived unless you nail mentorship, unless you become the mentor in the story. And when a leader does that, man, that is when things get awesome.
Yeah. And I, that was the lesson that I took away a year ago.
Yeah.
In order to be a mentor, the mentee has to invite you in,
Mhm,
because if
mhm.
they don't, you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, or you're just the boss, right? Or you're just the manager.
Yeah.
There's no connection, right? And if we want to just run a connectionless organization, an organization without that intangible side of purpose and passion, then okay. But if you want to tap into those other two things that are just innately a part of the story of creating significance in your business, then mentorship is needed. Yeah.
It's awesome. So I know, Clint, you're so busy. I don't wanna monopolize, too much of your time, but what do you have on your agenda this year so far? What kind of crazy things do you have going on? Because I know the global tour is about to kick off.
Yeah, it already has started. I head to Canada tomorrow. So we're headed up north, and yeah, it is a busy year. This is going to be our best year yet. We're so excited. I'm repping NASA today. I spoke for NASA a couple weeks ago. Um, we're just partnering with some incredible organizations that are realizing we got to do better, and we can do better, and we want to do better. And it's just so fun to link arms with these amazing organizations that are truly trying to be the best for their people. Not just say it, not just advertise it in their recruiting campaigns, but they mean it. They really mean it. And I think that's been the most fulfilling thing. And we've got a busy year ahead with some amazing people and organizations that are ready to do this full steam. And I can't wait.
Yeah. Well, for somebody who's achieving so much, you remain so humble. The closest I'm ever gonna get to NASA is maybe a T-shirt. You actually got an opportunity to be there and to engage in a meaningful way. I don't think they have any use for a healthcare compliance guy, but if they ever do, I'm always available. I will say this: you better not show up in my backyard again without us having a meal and breaking some bread together, man.
Okay. Okay. We need to. We need to. That's got to happen. That has got to happen. I'll keep posting the schedule. I'll
All right,
keep posting the tour. We'll make it happen.
absolutely, we're gonna do that. All right, so listen, I know my buddy has a lot going on. I'm so grateful that you carved out as much time as you did to hang out with me just for a little while. Your friendship means a tremendous amount to me. It's always such a treat to watch somebody continue to expand, to grow, to be recognized for the incredible things that you've done. And I think it all started with a simple message: be a Mr. Jensen.
Mhm. Yeah. So
All right. So, to my very good friend, Clint Pulver, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And for all of you who are tuning in, logging on, and hanging out with me, thank y'all so much for each and every single day allowing me to come into your computer, your radio, your headset, and just your head in general to fill it with all kinds of useful information. All right. I'll be back tomorrow with Jordan Johnson for our J squared segment, which is again the intersection of the business of medicine and regulatory compliance. So until then, remember, be good to yourself, but more importantly, y'all be good to each other. Take care.